And this is where it gets very challenging, and this is what most people don't understand about tinnitus, is that the reason it's become worse and worse over time is because this cycle continues. This tinnitus that initially was just a low-level baseline response now is firing, it's getting louder. That's going to affect one, which affects the other, which affects the other, and it goes around and round. Hey everyone, this is Dr. Ben Thompson here with PureTinnitus.com. I'm here to explain the relationship between tinnitus, stress, and the limbic system. First of all, I would like to explain that this relationship is complex. It's not obvious. It may take some time to fully understand it. And I'm going to start by just explaining how most people develop tinnitus. So tinnitus is something that does not affect that many people in their lives. Yes, they have it, but it's just this low-level stimulus. It's just hanging out in the background. It's not causing any harm, and they live their normal life. But what can happen here is that the tinnitus can be triggered by a stressful event. And some examples of the kind of feeling someone experiences when they're going through a stressful event would be an increased heart rate, increased blood pressure. The stress hormones are sent through the body, and the sleep can be affected. Make sure to watch this video until the end because I'm going to give two specific examples about how individuals have been affected by this tinnitus, stress, limbic system response and cycle. Some common examples of how stress can impact our lives would be related to our work, our family, challenges based on what's happening in the world. Maybe media is making us stressed out and we're working hard, therefore we're not sleeping. And suddenly we have anxiety because we're not sleeping, we don't feel right, we're not getting rest, we're not exercising, and then our diet also suffers. So building up all this stress. Now what this does is that it's increasing the heart rate, blood pressure, stress hormones, and our sleep gets worse. So this stress, it then sends the message with the tinnitus towards the limbic system. The limbic system is the part of our emotional brain which controls our fight or flight response. It also controls how we react to certain stimulus. The amygdala is one part of the limbic system that I want to talk about. If the amygdala thinks that a stimulus is a potential threat, then it will send your mind and your body into a fight or flight response. That fight or flight response is a physiological response as much as it is a psychological reaction. So these same components of stress are influenced by the emotional reaction of the limbic system. And again, where does this all start? It starts from the tinnitus, which is, again, for most people, it was just this baseline background noise. They may have heard it for many years, or it's just come up in their life. A stressful time with anxiety creates an emotional reaction that sends the body into this fight or flight response. When the body is in the fight or flight response and it hears the sound of the tinnitus, then the cycle continues. And this is where it gets very challenging, and this is what most people don't understand about tinnitus, is that the reason it's become worse and worse over time is because this cycle continues. The tinnitus causes stress and anxiety, and we're in this fight or flight state. Therefore, our emotional reactions get stronger, and that sends the tinnitus louder. So this tinnitus that initially was just a low-level baseline response now is firing, it's getting louder, and it's getting harder and harder to focus at work. When you're trying to focus and provide for you and your family, you can't stand being in a quiet place. If there's no noise around you, it's hard to work, it's hard to concentrate. Now, let alone if you don't have much stimulating your mind, if you're just in a quiet place, then you know this tinnitus is going to get louder and louder and louder. And what does that do to the average person? Well, it causes their sleep to suffer. the stress hormones in their body are released, their blood pressure goes up, and their heart rate goes up. When you're feeling tense, when your heart rate is going up, when your body's in a tense state of being, and your mind is also very tense, that does not tell our system that we're safe. It's actually telling our system that we're afraid, that we're in danger. And that message to the limbic system is fear, it's discomfort, it's not safe. As you can see here, if any of these go up, let's say you're not feeling comfortable, you're feeling tense, that's going to affect one, which affects the other, which affects the other. And it goes around and round. And this is sometimes called a vicious cycle. So now we have the opportunity of getting into this feedback loop to improve our tinnitus. Now, as I said earlier, you can't directly approach the tinnitus on the spot because there's no dial to turn it down. So what we have to do, we have to focus on either the stress or the limbic system, the emotional psychology, or the physiology, the stress response in the body first. So when I improve my sleep and I focus on slowing down my heart rate through something like meditation or taking a walk or doing something that slows us down and grounds us into the earth, then what does that do? That has a positive effect on the stress response in the body. And then that tells our limbic system, our emotional body, that we are safe, we are calm, we are grounded. I am not so threatened by this tinnitus like I thought I was. So our fear is improved. Our limbic system has a positive input. And then when our limbic system is processing the sound of the tinnitus, okay, that tinnitus is not actually a threat. That tinnitus is not going to hurt me. So then over time, the tinnitus improves. The tinnitus eases. It goes from the focus, from the primary attention, gently into the background. And sometimes this is referred to as habituation. It's called easing the tinnitus response. It's less and less in your attention. You can focus more on what's important, like being with your family, like doing the activities you love to do, enjoying peace and quiet, not letting the tinnitus control you. When we start to make progress with that, that sends this message to our physical body, to the stress response. Okay, we're doing all right. Our sleep is pretty good. Those stress hormones are improving. And we're noticing that the heart rate is improved as well. Our breathing is more natural. We're not so tense in the body. Again, that sends a signal to the limbic system that our body's okay. So then this fight or flight response, it gets better. And you see now, this is how you have positive input into this feedback loop. So when we continue this with different practices that we cover on this channel, subscribe if you're not already. And that's the relationship between tinnitus, stress, and the limbic system. Now let me explain these two different case studies of patients that I've worked with via telehealth that have started with negative changes, negative feedback loop, where I use the red marker here. And then after we worked together, we focused on the green, on the healthy changes. And I'll just explain to you what they found and what works for them. The first case study is a 55-year-old man who is a lawyer who has bilateral tinnitus in both ears, and it started for them about 1 year ago. They also have a mild hearing loss in both ears, and they got help from an audiologist at first. They're wearing hearing aids to help with their tinnitus. There's no known cause to the tinnitus other than hearing loss, and they can't focus during their day. It's hard for them to stay focused at work, and they've developed severe anxiety because of the tinnitus. Unfortunately, they're not sleeping well, and they worked with a psychiatrist to help them, who put them on anti-anxiety medication. That anti-anxiety medication made them have stomach issues, and when they were working in their job as a lawyer, trying to concentrate in the quiet office, they sometimes got panic attacks and they had to leave work early and stop working during their day to go home and just rest and try to take care of themselves because of the tinnitus. In addition to working with hearing aids, this particular patient traveled to different clinics across state lines in the US, and they spent probably close to $10,000 between the hearing aids, different pairs of hearing aids, and alternative treatments to try to help cure their tinnitus. 1 year later, they see me via virtual sessions. They're still having trouble with their tinnitus. The patient and I filled out the Tinnitus Functional Index for them, which is a questionnaire to help understand what specific parts of tinnitus are the struggle. And they scored a 68 out of 100, which is in the range of tinnitus being a big problem in their life. The treatment that we focused on was reducing the physiological effects of anxiety in the body. That would be mainly focused on the stress response in the physiology. And the way we did this is by focusing on a specific guided body scan that I created for tinnitus patients, daily relaxation practices, and improving the mental reactions to tinnitus, which is now focused in the limbic system area, and the fight or flight response that can come from catastrophic thinking that if the tinnitus gets bad one day or the other, that it's going to be the end. There's nothing to look forward to. Trying to rework some of that self-talk in the internal dialogue that can influence this loop as well. So that's the first patient. Now I'm going to jump to patient number 2 and review my notes here to share what their specific case was. This is a 60-year-old female who was a recently retired professional, and they had tinnitus in one ear, unilateral tinnitus that started 3 years ago. They have a mild high-pitch hearing loss. They wear a hearing aid and they use sound therapy through that hearing aid. Their tinnitus fluctuates. Some days it's very loud and shrill, very high pitch. Other days it's essentially gone. Quiet places and a lack of mental stimulation are a recipe for their downward spirals. And the downward spiral component is a combination of what we just talked about, where when it's a quiet place, they can hear the tinnitus, and then the body reacts, and then the mind goes into this fight or flight, and it creates this vicious circle. So this particular person, they saw me for tinnitus therapy virtually as well, and they scored a 74 out of 100 on the Tinnitus Functional Index, which means that tinnitus for them is a very big problem in their life. The focus of our treatment for this patient was on sound therapy, on verbal affirmations to get them through the challenging times when their tinnitus really takes over their life. Also by getting their partner, getting their spouse involved in learning how to exactly cope, how to manage the tinnitus during those days when it fluctuates and it's very loud and very shrill. So we tried to understand what exactly caused the tinnitus spikes, and that's an evolving process of learning the different triggers. We created a plan about how exactly to stay mentally occupied during the challenging tinnitus days so we don't end up in that vicious circle, and simply recognizing that when they're in a quiet place and they're not mentally stimulated, it's a recipe for a hard time with tinnitus. So guys, that's what we covered today. This is tinnitus, stress, and the limbic system. I had fun doing this. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Please leave a comment. What are you going to work on? Are you going to work on the stress in the body, or are you trying to work on the fight or flight sensation of the psychology of the mind? There's different practices that you can find in this channel to work on either of them. Let me know in the comments what you're most willing to try first, and I'll respond to it personally. Thanks for watching this video, guys. On the next video to my side, what is tinnitus therapy? This is where I describe my experience working with tinnitus patients and what exactly goes on in a tinnitus therapy session. A lot of that's done virtually these days. Check that out to my side if you're interested, and thanks for watching this video.